I make an offer on every single lead I get. Every single lead.
Welcome to this special episode of my podcast. Doesn't have a name yet, but we got a special guest today, Henry Eisenstein. You're 30 years young, brother. You are a commercial real estate broker. You got a 40-plus agent team that helps you sell commercial, and you've done $650 million worth of commercial deals. You're an investor, you're a speaker, and you're also helping agents come up in the commercial space. Welcome aboard, brother. I'm happy to chop it up, and I'm ready to get into it.
Thank you for having me, man. That's going to be great.
Yes, sir. So first thing, I got some questions here, man. I want to stay structured and making sure that there's so much value here, guys. As you guys know, I train residential realtors, and Henry trains commercial realtors. So I want to give you guys an inside look as, you know, how different our worlds are. We come into a residential fast-paced space, and Henry's doing the commercial. So I want to give you guys some insight as to key differences in the two spaces, and also talk a little bit more about your story, Henry. So first thing I want to ask you, brother, how did you get started in commercial real estate, and what was the biggest challenge you faced early on? I want to elaborate on this question as well, because myself, when I think about commercial versus residential, I have this big mental obstacle, a bunch of different legalities, it's a different process, different timeline. How did you get started in this space, and what was the biggest challenge versus residential that you face in commercial?
Yeah, because it's actually funny that you say that the more legalities, because honestly, it's a lot less legalities. You don't have NAR to deal with. You don't have a lot of regulation, because regulation's all to protect the consumer. When you're dealing with commercial deals, it's like the Wild West. I didn't know that, obviously, getting into the business. But what really transformed my mindset was my first ever commercial deal, which was referred to me. I was doing 100 residential deals a year. Randomly, my friend goes, "Hey, I got a friend of mine who wants to sell his multifamily building." Ended up making over $100,000 on the deal. I had already done several, 2s, 3s, and 4 families. So like doing a larger multifamily. I mean, this was only, I think it was like 16 units.
Okay.
And sold it for 2.6. And seller wanted 2.5, so I made $100,000. And
so it was a wholesale deal?
No, I brokered it. So
okay.
I made my 4 points. And anyways, I got the check, and I was like, wow. My average commission check went from which was like $12,000, and all of a sudden I made like 10 times that average check in one deal. And it wasn't that much more complicated. It didn't take infinitely longer. It wasn't like, there's all these incredible hurdles to jump over that everybody thinks in that process.
Okay. So what's that misconception? Like, break this down for us, right? A residential deal, you meet somebody, let's say you're gonna represent a buyer. They're gonna get pre-approved, pre-qualified for a loan. You're gonna go out there, find a property, submit an offer on that property. You go through your inspection, appraisal period, get the loan cleared up, that property closes. What's the key difference from residential to commercial? And simplify that for us if you can.
Yeah, so when you're dealing with commercial, I'll start with the seller side. When you're in residential, you get a seller lead, you want to list that property for sale. First thing you're going to do always, right?
On the market.
You're going to try to, you're going to go to that seller and you're going to be like, hey, what's a good time to meet? Meet with the client, try to pitch a listing, get it on the MLS, hope and price somebody else has a buyer for it, get a property sold, right? In the commercial world, it is 100% about finding good opportunities. Whoever can find the best opportunities, and when I say opportunities, I mean a good priced product in the marketplace. Okay. We're looking for, I am an investor first. My lens is always coming from the perspective of, I want to find the best deals in the marketplace, because the better price that product is, the easier it is for me to sell it and the more money I can make on the deal, right? Because when you have a listing, you're confined to whatever your listing commission is set at, right? You have that listing agent, you have that seller who says, hey, I'm only going to pay you 2%. 4%, 3%, whatever they're going to pay you, 6% if you're lucky. In commercial, you find a deal that's really, really, really well priced. Seller is super motivated. Mm-hmm. I've had deals where I've made over 20% because I don't just think like a broker. I think like an investor first, right? And we call it our 4-lens strategy, multi-lens strategy, because listing a property is one option. It's not the only option. The first lens is, at what price can I buy this property at?
Right.
If it doesn't make sense for that, I go to my next lens, which is wholesaling. And obviously in residential, it's more complicated to do that now because of NAR. But we go to that next lens and say hey, is there enough of a delta between what the seller wants and what the buyer's willing to pay to wholesale this? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Next lens, if it doesn't meet that criteria, we go to brokering the deal off market. This is how we, on average, our fees over 5% every single time, right? We're averaging about 5.25% across every single deal we close. Because most of commercial deals are done off market. In the residential world, nothing's done off market.
It doesn't make sense.
No, you would never do that. I would never tell anybody to not list a property for sale, right? And then the very last option, if a seller is still adamant about selling, but he wants to sell for some crazy, ridiculous price, you're like, fine, sure, I'll list it, but that's last.
Really? So it's quite the opposite.
It's exact opposite. Exactly.
Okay, and now residential is a lot of end user retail kind of stuff, a lot of emotion involved with sellers selling a property that they've been in for 20 years. They have a lot of memories. Very tough to separate, logic and emotion. Buying a property, let's say you're raising a family, you want good school zones, good location, different finishes.
Yep.
Commercials completely logical, right? It's completely
the numbers.
numerically based, not emotionally based.
Yeah, it's mainly numbers. If the numbers pencil, the deal makes sense.
And does that make the process, coming from someone that did 100 residential deals a year, does that make the process more straight line?
I'd say it's a lot less stressful. Because like in the residential world, someone's like, I don't like the kitchen layout. And you're like, this is the location you like, this is the price, this is this, and like all these check boxes. And they're like, yeah, I just don't like the kitchen layout, or I don't like this, or I don't, these small little things.
It's
that
just
kills
numbers
the deal.
for...
Yeah, commercial, it's just like the numbers pencil, great, let's do the deal. I'm working on an $8 million deal right now where, the numbers came back and we can't use the second floor like we thought we were gonna be able to use the second floor. And then we're gonna have to go to get a retrade for $2 million. You think asking for a $20,000 credit in a residential deal is difficult? I'm about to ask for a $2 million credit.
Okay. So this is all very insightful. I want to break this down for our residential realtors watching.
Sure.
How can an agent that's doing, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deals a month residential, how can they tap into commercial to get their feet wet? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, so my typical philosophy is never stop the faucet if it's running, right? Which is you got money coming in. So don't just stop cold turkey and go into the commercial space. That never, ever makes sense. That's never the move. But what is the move is taking 1 day a week at a bare minimum and start prospecting for commercial deals. You can get a software like Reonomy, like CoStar, like CREsync, many different softwares out there. You pull a lead list, and you just prospect, just like you'd be cold calling around like circle prospecting for a neighborhood or expireds or cancels. Very similar script. I have a free script book on my website. You can go download it. It's absolutely free. It's literally exactly what I say, right? I'd be like, hey, John, I'm calling somebody up. My name is Henry. I'm a local investor in the market, or you say you're a local broker in the market. I was just calling to see if you'd be totally against selling your property. It's like, it's not that complicated, right? It's literally like a circle prospecting script. That's what we do 24/7, 365 across 250,000 cold calls a month is what my team does right now. So that script is very simplistic. The process then becomes complex about what is this property actually evaluated at.
Okay.
So it's the call is not the difficult part, right?
Okay.
The difficult part is now evaluating this asset and actually
Underwriting the deal.
Yeah, underwriting the deal, understanding the process, negotiating, also working with the buyer to understand like what their criteria is like. It's not as simple as, oh, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in this location. Can you find it for me? Me and my wife Sally want to go buy a house. It's not like that. I have guys who want to make a 20% internal rate of return. I have guys who want to make 12% cash on cash return. If you don't understand how to even calculate that, you're going to be left in the dust.
I feel like that's what made me hesitant to ever transition to commercial, and I feel like that's what makes other people hesitant. Is that information, cash on cash, cap rates, all that kind of...
But think about it like this. An agent who never gets into commercial real estate is like an agent who just gets stuck renting properties for the rest of their life. Imagine you just were a rental agent. I don't care if you're in Manhattan, Miami, LA, or any place around the world. Imagine only understanding the world of rentals and then never selling a residential house. And then like one person finally shares with you the idea, hey, did you ever know you could sell this? You're like, oh, wow, instead of making a few $1,000s, I can make 10 grand or 15 or 20 grand, right? It's the same thing for commercial. It's not infinitely more complex. Like thankfully, I happen to do well in math, so it kind of corresponds to now. I'm a 2-time college dropout. It's not like you need a lot of smarts. If it, I'm not a rocket scientist here,
Right, because that was my aha moment. My first 13 months in real estate, I did straight rentals, making 4 to 6 grand a month. Closed my first sale. Made the same thing that I would make in 10 rentals.
Exactly.
And I said, I'm never going to do a rental again. I'll help service my clients, etc. You're saying that's the same feeling when you close your first...
Literally the same exact feeling
deal.
I had when it was commercial. Now, I couldn't stop and just say I'm never going to do a rental again or never sale again.
Right.
But
are you still doing residential or you're strictly doing...
Everything I do, I refer out. I'll take a 75% referral fee. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
75 you.
Yeah.
Let's say, the cold calling, great, get your script book. How do you go then? What's the next step into learning commercial? Is it learning how to look at properties, underwrite properties?
Yeah.
What are some tools that you use that can make it simple for a realtor that's watching right now, it's residential, that wants to open that avenue up for commercial? What's the simplest way to start understanding the lingo and the terminology? Because it is different.
For sure.
It's going to be different.
Yeah, look, number one, it's deal by deal. A lot of this game is deal by deal, but just to give you really quick fundamentals, one, pick a niche to start, right?
So what's a niche within the commercial
An
space?
asset class that you can somewhat understand, and most of the time I recommend a residential agent gets into multifamily. Smaller multis. Start selling, instead of selling 2 families and single families, right, up to 4 units.
Okay.
Start selling 5s, 8s, 10s, right? I have a 6 family right now. They're in think about how crazy this is. I have a 6 family right now. Seller wants to net $800,000.
Okay.
An average real estate agent would go to that seller let's just say it's even a 2 family mentally. A normal realtor will go to that individual, run the numbers and say, hey, let's list it for X because that's what it could be listed for on the market, right? I only see it from the lens of like listing the property for sale. I know this property's worth at least $1 million. So I'm going to lock the deal in a contract for $800,000 with the seller. I'm the buyer. and I have a buyer for $1 million. So I'm going to wholesale. I'm going to double close on this deal. I'm going to lock it up for 800. And I'm going to flip it for $1 million and never actually take ownership in this deal for more than 15 minutes. If you do 200 grand in a spread, okay, minus closing costs, sure, maybe I'll make $170. I'll make $170,000 on a deal that's 800 grand. An average realtor will look at this deal and make 2%. They'll make 16 grand on this deal. I'm going to make 160, 170. This is what I meant by making 20% fees. But they don't think like that. They just think straight to listings. Like if you're getting started, the fundamentals, if you're in a residential agent, start looking into smaller multifamily. It's probably the easiest way to just kind of get a quick gauge because you understand two families. Like most people understanding a two family, when you have now 8 units or 16 units, it's not infinitely more complex.
You got to look at rental rates.
Yeah, exactly.
Condition of the property.
Yeah, you start reading P&Ls. Like you look, you're going to have an income, right? Like, let's take this deal as an example. You're going to take a multifamily property. You're going to ask them, which is all in the script book, literally tells you exactly what questions to ask, okay? You're literally just going to ask them, like, just out of curiosity, what is the total rent, right? What do you make on an average monthly basis? So he says, I'm making 10 grand a month. Okay, cool. Now you do 10 grand a month times 12 is 120 grand a year. 120 grand a year. Now he says, like, okay, what are your expenses? You'll ask him, what is your expenses? You say, I pay for taxes, insurance. Maybe he pays for water because most of the time water is not separate, especially in older properties, right? Maybe the tenants pay electric and gas, and then the guy will pay for some maintenance, and then you calculate out some expenses, right? So he has 120 grand in gross income. He gives you all the expenses. By the way, never ever trust. It's verify always, right? What is the saying? Trust but verify or something.
Right.
Always verify that they are 100% accurate. I've had people say like, oh yeah, I only pay for taxes and insurance, or I only pay for taxes, they pay for everything else, and it's just not accurate. Always verify. But once you get the numbers and you do a quick calculation, you're like, oh, okay, based on this income, the net operating income, which is just your gross income minus your expenses, you have a net income, right? Just like running a business. And then you take a multiple, or you can call it a cap rate, right? Which is just basically a fancy way of saying, how fast can I recoup my money? So buying a 10 cap, which would be a wonderful deal, by the way. If you have 10 caps, please message me. But if you find a deal that's a 10 cap, which is basically the income, net operating income is 100 grand, and they will sell it for $1 million. That's 10 times, or it takes you 10 years to make your money back. If you buy a 5 cap, which is 20 times, right? It's a 5% rate of return on a property, right? Which basically means if they want $1 million, you're making 50 grand a year.
Okay.
So $50,000 net operating income a year. They want $1 million. That's 5% of $1 million.
Okay.
I'm making 5% on my money if I bought it in cash.
It'd take you 20 years to get
it would make you it'd take you 20 years to recoup your money.
Is that a good investment?
It depends. Can I take 50 grand a year to 200 grand a year? Maybe. I would probably buy that if I can do that. But if 50 grand a year can maybe be 60 grand a year, no, absolutely not. Because think about all the options that they have. They have the stock market. They got crypto. You got all these different options. If you're not making a decent rate of return on your investment, what's the point of it? I would definitely just start with from residential agents, get into the multifamily space. Start selling 5 units, start looking at 10 units, 20 units. It's not as complicated as you think. Go meet with an investor, 2 or 3. Some of these softwares will even tell you the people who bought the properties most recently.
And you can just start calling and building that network.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you call up a guy who just bought 3 multifamilies in your town.
So the first thing, just to break this down as simple as possible for these people watching, the first thing you want to do is not look into industrial, warehouses, hotels, buildings like this one, multifamily.
Multifamily is probably the simplest one.
Okay.
But if you have experience in other areas,
those are where the bigger deals are at.
Listen, there's bigger deals in multis too, for sure.
100 unit.
Yeah, 100 units, 300, whatever, right? Like, you're talking tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals, right?
Okay.
I had an agent of mine having a call recently, that was talking to somebody who had a 700 plus unit deal for 140 million, So yeah, you could do large multis too. It's more so about if you have zero experience in commercial whatsoever, multis is the way to go. Small multis, start there. If you have experience from like, I used to do some type of retail salon, you used to have some experience, because your father was in the industrial world, something along the lines of it's not mind-blowingly brand new to you. Maybe you can try other things. I've sold liquor stores for frick's sake. I've sold gas stations. We've shopping centers, everything you can imagine. But it's like you just want a little bit of knowledge going into it. So like if you know nothing, multis is easy.
How do you find those leads for multi? Is there a software that you use?
Yeah. So we use Reonomy. You can use Reonomy, CREsync, or CoStar. Those are the main commercial real estate softwares. Very similar to like the tax records of the MLS.
Okay. And then let's say you call 100 people, right? Let's say you're dialed in. Yep. You got a good framework. Out of 100 people you speak to, how many interested sellers are you finding?
It's very similar to prospecting and resi. The only difference is that the conversations
You're saying very similar to circle prospecting? Because, for example, when you're prospecting for sale by owners, very high contact rate. If you know what you're doing,
for sure.
Very high call to appointment rate.
Yeah,
because they're selling already.
I'd say it's slightly higher than circle prospecting, but not much higher.
Okay, so it's more of like a numbers game.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there a for sale by owner in commercial where they're like, I'm selling
It's
for
actually,
sale?
yeah. You can go on LoopNet right now and you'll see properties that are listed for sale by owner right now.
Would it be better to start with circle prospecting, or would it be better to start with for sale by owner, or both?
So keep in mind, the process is never to list a property for sale. Do not, like the vast majority of deals in the commercial world are not listed for sale. So to find the best deals, because think about it.
The ones that no one knows about.
Let's just say you're my investor and I'm the broker. I call you up and you go, yo, Alexis, I have this great deal. It's listed on LoopNet. And I send you a LoopNet link. Okay. You're like, I've seen this already.
Yes.
What do I need you? But I go, hey, Alexis, it's Henry. I have this great off-market deal. I'm direct to seller. Guy wants to sell it for a great price. No one's seen this but you.
Because you found it.
Exactly.
So the first thing you'll do, because you know how to identify a good deal, you'll find a deal and you'll lock it up under contract to then see what the options are.
Not always.
Not always.
Listen, if the spread's there, like in this instance, like I had mentioned before, the seller only wants to net 800 grand. Of course, I'm going to lock it up.
Lock it up for a spread. If not, you're just going to try to get points.
Most of the time, then it goes to off-market brokering.
And that's,
like I said,
you got to build a network.
But remember, it's lenses, right? Like
right.
And I go through them, and a lot of the time, I get to the off-market broker lens because the other two don't make any sense. I'm not going to just lock up every deal. I'm not here to tell you don't broker deals. I'm a broker, guys. Like I will sell a ton of properties, and now I sell it through all my agents, right? Because I don't care about the recognition, but broker deals. Like there's a lot of money to be broker, but don't list it. Good deals are not meant to be listed. Why would you split a fee? You know why no commercial brokers split? I mean, you know why that the vast majority of commercial real estate brokers don't list properties for sale? You know why they don't? Because if you had a buyer in your back pocket who's probably going to buy that deal, why would you list it? You would never list it.
So would you say it's some upfront work that you got to do in building your buyer list?
It's both.
You got to split time prospecting sellers and split time prospecting
sort of
your buyers.
Correct. So what we do is that we do, we call it shifting the script. So when you're on the phone and someone says they don't want to sell, which is very common, right? Residential, you probably hear this every single day, all the time. In commercial, of course, it's also common. People don't want to sell. But you can pivot in the script, right? Like, the pivot strategy is where you're on the phone with someone and say, hey, listen, Henry, I don't want to sell the property. And most people would just go, okay, thanks, click. I'll shift in that script where I'll be like, I can totally understand you don't want to sell your property. This is an amazing location. You're probably, doing spectacular here. Just out of curiosity though, if I found another property very similar to this one here at 123 Main Street, would you be totally against buying another property? Boom, it's a buyer now. And then they go, no, actually, no, I'm good. Thanks. I just have this one property, two properties. Awesome. No problem. It sounds like you're super thrilled with your circumstances. Just out of curiosity though, is your property at 123 Main Street 100% occupied? And then you can immediately pivot back into a lease. So every single conversation has the ability to be a buyer, a seller, or a lease listing. Every single time. When you're calling up a residential homeowner and they don't want to sell, what are you going to do?
See if they want to invest.
Yeah, but how many of them are really going to?
Not many, but
much more rare in commercials.
Because they're already dealing with higher net worth individuals that have that back end. So there's a question that I wanted to ask you about negotiation, right? Commercial deals involve complex negotiations. What are some tactics that you use that residential agents watching can borrow when dealing with tough clients or like bidding wars?
Okay, so one thing that I do very differently, which is against the grain, very contrarian, most people don't ever do this, but I do this because I think like an investor first, which is I make an offer on every single lead I get.
From your name, you're the investor.
Correct, but so like my brokers will put it, they're the broker on the deal. They'll put my name as the buyer. They'll make 6%. They pay themselves 6%. The seller has no idea that, of course, I'm taking part of that. But the purpose of that is to get a gauge. How motivated are you? I quickly underwrite it. My team generates, 50, 75, 100 leads a day, whatever it is. Every lead we generate, I make an offer on it. Every single lead. So think about the next listing you get. And they go like, listen, either make me an offer or, bring me a buyer, right? Like we get this all the time, right? In the residential world. Bring me a buyer. If I got you, just out of curiosity, how much do you want? Well, I want $700,000. Okay, great. I actually have a client I'm working with right now. Based on everything that's going on with your property, they could probably offer you 500 grand cash. A residential agent's terrified to say that. Terrified.
Yeah. 500 for commercial.
Yeah. But guess what? What I'm looking for in the commercial world, because it's not like they're always thrilled. Please, it's not like everyone, same circumstances, because that's exactly what I do. Someone wants $7 million, I'm offering them $3.5, $4 million. Now, obviously, most of the time, a seller wants way too much money for their property. So when they're telling me 7, it's probably only worth 5, and I'm offering you 3.5. Because I want to gut check you. How motivated are you? How much time am I going to actually spend trying to do business with you? Because if you knew that the seller wasn't really that motivated to sell, how much time would you give them?
I teach my agents to not focus on that at all. Actually,
I agree. I say the same thing.
Because we can both agree that residential real estate, I say as transparently, is a vehicle to build capital for the next play. I don't 100%. Think many people want to be a realtor for 10 years. 5 years. I've always used residential as a vehicle to get into the next opportunity. and build up that capital.
Like I was saying to you before, the goal of real estate is to sell to buy real estate, not sell until you die.
Correct.
Nobody.
Which is a lot of people are stuck in that cycle.
How many brokers do you? Everyone knows an agent right now that's 60, 70, or 80 years old.
Yep.
What are you doing? I will be 60 or 70, 80 years old. Selling real estate, not because I have to, but because I love this freaking game, and I'll probably own $1 billion worth of real estate at that point. And I'm going to constantly try to, if a guy doesn't want to take my offer when I'm 70 years old and I can broker his deal and make 300 grand, I'm going to do it.
For sure. Now, let me ask you this. Let's say you lock up a deal, right? Let's talk about the multifamily, 20 unit building. What's the timeline on that? What's the process once you get buyer and seller connected? What happens next? Is there an inspection? Is there if there's vacancy rates, is that affected? Like walk us through that process.
Yeah. So for the most part, just broad terms, the quote due diligence, in a commercial deal is not infinitely more complex than residential. It's just not. They do property inspections. You do the same thing in residential. We do an appraisal. You do the same thing in residential. We do tank sweeps and environmental inspections. You do the same thing in residential. Now, the main difference is that there's also part of that due diligence is spent underwriting the deal, like going through the financials, reviewing leases if necessary, understanding, the numbers of the deal at a high level. Where in a residential deal, what numbers? Right?
It's what did the other house sell for, and
exactly
how much is the buyer? I think there is a science. I will say this to selling residential deals a little bit above market value. If you're a good marketer and you can position the property at a nice price point, attract more buyers, and you're good at negotiating and creating an emotional feeling of the property, you can leverage it. But I think with commercial, there's a much greater margin when you have a property that has maybe rents below market value, could fix it up a little bit. That's when you're finding a good deal, right?
What I do, again, different from many, is that I'm not going for the listing. I am not the fiduciary of the seller 99 times out of 100. Unless I'm signing exclusives with the individual, which that's not my focus. Many of my agents do that. That's not my focus personally. Like I am a fiduciary for my buyers and myself. That's how I view this business. Where I'm looking for fantastic deals.
Right.
And by the way, most deals that take place in the commercial world, you're going to be working with an investor similar to myself, where we need a return. We need a great return on our money, or why would I buy the deal, right? So if you had back pocket buyers, it's just about finding them good opportunities. This is why I pre-negotiate up front. This is why I submit an offer up front, right? Now that we're under contract, again, I'm not saying that we're wholesaling, but once you get the deal under contract, they do all the same similar stuff, right? We do our inspections, we do the due diligence, we review numbers, we do, environmental inspections, we do all that same kind of stuff.
How long does that process typically take?
It depends. I mean, the only times listen, guys, when you're dealing with the craziness of super long-term deals, it's development, which by the way, I'm going to say it right here, right now. I've done development deals. And I don't recommend residential agents get so engaged with it. So many residential agents I know get right into development. They're like, I can understand building a house, so I'm gonna go try to sell tracts of land to a developer
for commercial.
But I'm saying even for resi, development takes so long. All the stories that we've heard about, that commercial deal took a year. Look, I mean, think about it. There's some residential deals that I have that you're under contract for 6 months sometimes. It's just nonsense, right? This thing, whatever happens. In commercial, sure. When the nonsense, quote unquote, occurs, your attorney review periods can be weeks, sometimes months. I've been in attorney review on one deal right now for almost 90 freaking days. Again, that sometimes happens in residential. Sometimes, I'm not saying 90 days, but sometimes it gets dragged out. Due diligence in commercial, most of the time it should be done in 30, 60-ish, maybe 90 days pretty regularly, right?
Okay.
Around 60 is pretty usual.
Which is a period of time where the buyer can still back out.
Correct. Yeah.
Inspection period.
Yep. And then, depends on their other contingencies, right? But other than that, the ones that really take a year, most of the time it's development deals. Most of the time, right? That's why I don't want to I don't like doing development deals. All these people like doing development deals. I don't.
Because your thing is, sell to buy. So you want...
Ideally, personally, I like existing product. Now, funny enough, I was literally just meeting with a guy right before we met. He's got a 10-family property here near the water in Miami. I'm trying to lock up his deal for a good price because I want to wholesale it, okay? Because I want to lock him up at X price and try to flip it for $1 million or $2 million once I get all the approvals. That, I'm willing to go through the craziness of development to make $2 million. But if you're going to make 50 grand and wait a year, what are you doing? I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, I hear you. So I think you've done a really good job of giving us a breakdown. I'm even learning. And I always teach my agents this, focus on one thing, focus on your current vehicle. If you're trying to get to this place, if you focus on this one more, it'll get you there faster.
1000%.
So any commercial opportunity that I've ever come across, because I've had clients that I've sold their houses and they're like, I want to do this with my business. Hey, look, I got this person that I can refer you to.
Yep.
I want to ask you, you're 30 years old, you know, you've done well for yourself. I'm close to your age, you know, and when you start making money as an agent, let's talk to our younger community or people that are starting to make good money for the first time. How do you manage that change of income? How do you fight the urge to upgrade your lifestyle and put yourself in a position where you're 30 years old and you have the net worth that you have? How do you get to that place? What comes first in your mind?
So number one, I've also been a culprit or a victim to that, right?
Okay.
Victim to my circumstances, right? Like I have made bad decisions financially early on in my career. I've been making over 600 grand a year since I'm 24 years old, now 30.
Okay.
Right.
So for 6 years, you've been making 600 grand a year.
Well, I'm saying more,
at least 600 grand a year.
So at a very young age, I made decent money. So I can understand exactly, like I went through this where like all of a sudden my lifestyle drastically went went crazy, right? And a big part of becoming wealthy is understanding sacrifice at a high level. Because you're going to sacrifice something. Because you're going to sacrifice either the going out, the fast car, the fancy Rolexes, the fancy vacations. You're going to sacrifice that now so that you can do that times 10 for the rest of your life.
Correct.
Or you can enjoy some of it now, right? Or a lot of it now, and maybe never get to the point where you can do it for the rest of your life if you don't stop working.
Right.
Or, you know, unless you don't stop
selling
working.
to.
So for me, thankfully, I feel like, because I still experience it in some ways. I mean, I probably spend way too much money. I just bought my wife a horse. Like I have 2 cars in Miami that I don't drive. I understand, you know, I have the fancy watches. I have the fancy clothes. I go to 5-star dinners all the time. I enjoy the nice things. And I've realized a few years ago that at a certain point, it doesn't make you any more happy. Once you're past survival, it's not like it infinitely changes your happiness levels. You know what I mean?
Right.
Flying first class versus coach, which is literally 1 row behind first class, isn't so crazy different that your right, that your happiness levels drastically change. Or, you know, for me, it's like I like great food. I like staying in nice hotels, like of course, and it's within my means. Like if I see a 5-star hotel that's at $400 a night versus $1,000 a night, there is no difference to me.
You're just spending more money.
Exactly. It's meaningless. But look, there's many people who are watching right now, just like my younger self, where you have to experience it first. Whether it's me saying it or someone who's 30, again, I have a mentor who's worth, over $500 million, and his lifestyle is insane. But you'd never know that guy's worth that kind of money if you met him. He's a super genuine guy. But we have to sometimes experience it for ourselves. But then you realize the problem also is that just like many people, I'm 30 now. I feel like my net worth should be 5 times what it is right now.
If you would have made the smarter decisions.
A little bit smarter decisions.
But I feel like you just said, I feel like you got to go through it.
Because
when you look back at 20 years from now, we're going to say that I'm glad I went through it and I fumbled a couple 100,000, maybe a couple million to be able to retain the 20, 30, 40, 50, 100.
For sure. But then there's also some people where like, if you're just, I don't like to use the word smart enough, but if you're just disciplined enough, the speed in which you can become, quote, rich, I'm not saying wealthy because that's a different level, but rich in the level of circumstance where you're way past survival, it sometimes happens to people way faster if you're just willing to be more disciplined than most.
Right. So here's my thing, right? And I think a lot of the people watching this maybe have this take as well. I have this take where you're like, I'm with you. I've already been through the first, I started making 300 grand a year at 23. That was my first big year. Had the financial hiccups. Now I'm much more keen to learning, all right, I want to live it forever, not just temporarily. So I'm going to be smarter and cut down. I'm also never going to be 28 again and having the opportunity to drive a supercar. Let's talk about that real quick. Where do you find that balance? Because of course, if we play smart when we're 45, we can drive a supercar.
Sure.
What do you say to those people that are like, well, I want to be able to drive the supercar at 28 and still have it later on? Is there a balance? Is that justifiable?
I think you need to know yourself.
Like if it's fun for you to drive that car, is that something that you should?
Why not rent it for a weekend? Why spend a Lambo's $250K? Why not just rent it for 2 weekends in a row? Or even you could spend 10 G's rented every day for $1,000 a day for 10 days straight and get it out of your system.
Get it out of it'll get out of your system though.
Yeah, but as somebody who I love cars. Right. I love watches. I love nice things. And I'm telling you, it doesn't make you any happier.
I agree.
Every car I've ever bought, I've regretted. Every single car I've regretted. because I don't care. It's, you realize that the only people who really like the fact that I drive a Rolls Royce are young guys
that are after the wrong shiny object.
Yeah, but who cares?
Right?
Like, who cares? It doesn't. For me, one of my dream cars is the Rolls Royce Cullinan. I told myself, like, I like, ready? I'll shift your mind, right? This is what I've been doing personally.
Okay.
I do rewards. Massive goals, massive rewards.
Okay.
When I had my first $100,000 net month, I bought my first Rolex. I was disciplined enough to not buy. I could have afforded it way beforehand, but I said, to reward myself, here's the goal: $100,000 net month. I'm buying a Rolex. Next goal is $1 million net. When I do $1 million net in a month, I'm gonna buy myself a Patek, right, or a Patek. I'm gonna buy a $100,000 watch. Maybe it'll be an Audemars. I don't know yet. And for me, I could sell this watch during COVID for a $5,000 profit, right? A couple grand profit, whatever it was, right?
Right.
But the money's indifferent because this means so much to me. What the sacrifice that went into this watch.
Right, it's a trophy.
Right? Same thing for the next watch. And then for a Cullinan, I'm not gonna buy it until I do 10 million in a month, because then the car will mean something to me.
It's a reward, not a... Yeah.
Exactly. So set high goals, an unnecessarily high goal, and if you smash it, then you can do what you want. You've set the goal. Because, again, I'll spend 10% of that net month on something stupid.
And it doesn't affect you.
There's no effect.
But until then, it's not.
But then you don't deserve it. Kudos to you. You made 250 grand this year, 100 grand this year, 500, $1 million there. Kudos to you. What's cool is doing it every year for the rest of your life when you're not working and it just keeps coming. Where your cash flow keeps coming and you don't even realize it, but you got another 100 grand in your bank account this month or this week. That's what I'm after.
The peace of mind and...
Yeah,
and
the
more
peace of
importantly,
mind,
what
but
we talked
also,
about earlier off camera is the people that are coming into this world after us, our kids.
For sure. Look, my entire life will be a sacrifice for my future generations. I'm just willing to go through enough shit and sacrifice my entire life. I will do that. I literally have been saying this nonstop for the last half decade, but I've been in this industry for 10 years. I'm on a 40-year run. I got another 40 years in me at least.
Yeah.
If God's graces give me another 40 years, I'm going. I'm going till I'm at least 70. I'm 30 now. I'm going to at least 7. My buddy who is worth over $500 million, unbelievable guy. He's 77 years old and still loves the game. Not because he needs to.
Exactly.
This guy, right? Like, it's not because he needs to, because I love the game. I'm obsessed. I'm wondering what my potential is. And sure, I'm having a little bit of fun in the meantime, but fun's different.
If you're an agent watching this and maybe you are not a realtor or maybe you are a realtor, I think Henry gave us some amazing insights. Please go follow Henry, check out his YouTube content. And if you guys have any questions, I'm sure he wouldn't be upset to answer. We'll see you guys in the next one.